I think that in this small group, which I didn't expect there to be so much rich conversation about, indicates why care homes really are an important focus for the bill. I absolutely want to echo the points made by the noble Lady Baroness Finlay about care home workers, and they haven't been consulted. And I would like to ask the noble learned lord whether he might make a commitment to meet up with representatives of the care sector to discuss the very real issues that they will have created by this bill if it passes. Because what we can recognise is that many of the people who will in society be eligible at some point for assisted death, if the bill passes, will probably be in care homes, because that's where elderly people are who might well get terminal diagnoses, right? Rather than 14-year-olds, you're talking about a different cohort. So at least that has to be considered. And I think that, therefore, some of the previous contributions have been very helpful, and I really wanted to thank the noble Lord Blencathra for laying it out so clearly about why this should matter to us all. I'm somewhere between the noble Lord Deebden and the noble Lady Baroness Hayter in terms of, care homes, because I think for the purposes of this discussion, I'd rather not go down the kind of care home horror story scenario. But I think that even if you accept care homes as positive places in general, there's still huge challenges for this bill in relation to them. So if I can just kind of lay out some of those things. I do want to say that despite the horror stories, in most instances, care homes are incredibly important to society's care of the elderly and the frail. And although they're too often neglected, understatement of the year, by state support, they are fulfilling an incredibly important public service. By and large, care workers that I know and have encountered, personally far too many of them for a variety of reasons, but those people are heroic. They're poorly paid, underappreciated, and absolutely overworked. And we know there's a massive turnover of staff. These things have been, well covered in different discussions. I also find that many care workers are amazingly generous and creative in their care of our older citizens who are in need of residential care. Right? No matter which way, despite all that, we have to be realistic. In care homes, it is difficult, challenging circumstances, and we have got a social care crisis, which we talk about all the time, and this is the living example of the social care crisis. There's not enough spaces in care homes. They can be chaotic, not because of the staff or what have you. And actually, in a day-to-day sense in care homes, standard mental capacity assessments are made by overworked care workers who are not clinical professionals. And I do worry that those assessments used for treatments might bleed in some way into the future as a way of signing off a new medical treatment on the block. Guess what? Assisted dying. I mean, I think we've got to recognise that's a possible concern. And I think whether I'm slightly contradicting myself now, but we do have to recognise that under the kind of pressures that people are in, many elderly people in care homes have had things like do not resuscitate, have had inappropriate diagnosis one way or another, and also, by the way, I can't remember who, I think Baroness O'Lone made the point, that I've been in situations where an elderly person has been given their meal, given their drinks, and it's been ticked, eaten and drunk. And they haven't, right? Because they didn't know what it was. They didn't know what the food was, what the drink was, but it was ticked away. That wasn't cruelty. That was rushing around. So they didn't not feed them. They weren't starving them, but they didn't have time to sit down and do anything about it. So anyway, you've got all that goes on. But the thing about it is, why this matters is because a larger number of people who may fall into eligibility because they're terminally ill will be people, as I say, whose capacity needs to be assessed and they will live in care homes. And the problem is that care homes are a gathering of people who have fluctuating cognition. That's the main thing that goes on in care homes beyond care, is cognition changes all the time. So the idea you're going to have a firm, autonomous decision made in those circumstances, at the very least, needs to be queried slightly. We're talking about UTIs, dehydration, infection, or the effects of medication, and of course the big one is undiagnosed dementia, early dementia that nobody's noticed, which the Alzheimer's Society data shows that only two-thirds of those with dementia have received a formal diagnosis. Sadly, the diagnosis rate is, there's massive waiting list. The diagnosis rate in Wales, inevitably, sadly, is even lower. But there's also hidden dementia, not even anyone trying to get the people assessed yet, but it's nonetheless there. And because of the heightened risks of cognitive impairment issues and this instability in cognition, I think that we definitely need to take the desire of these amendments seriously, that we need to have specialist clinical assessments to ensure that capacity means capacity and is not part of a good days, bad days scenario. So just on the good days, bad, anyone who's had any relatives in a care home or been to care home to spend any time, you will know that about the good days, bad days situation. You can go in one day, chat away to a coherent and articulated older person, and the next time you see them, they're completely incoherent and confused. Go back and they're chatting away again. I did want to, relate one time with my mother. I have to say that my mother did have quite a number of deathbed scenes, by which I don't mean she was melodramatic. I mean, we kept being told she was about to die, which just to show you that terminal illness diagnosis is unreliable, because she got better over many a year, as they say. But anyway, she was, in one instance, she'd had a UTI, then she got pneumonia, deathbed scene, disorientated, black mood, and she said to me, and what's the point? She wanted to give up. She was in a desperate state, and I thought I was saying goodbye to her. Days later, I went to see her. She was bright, optimistic, holding court about politics while watching the news. Yes, I take after my mother, in the TV room of the care home. And I said to her, oh, it's good that you're quite bright. You were a bit depressed last week. And she said, don't be silly. I don't get depressed and I've never been happier. So my question to the noble noble and learned Lord Faulkner, should capacity be such a lottery depending on which day the person is having their assessment for capacity, when the decision is a life and death decision, not a joke that I can tell in a speech here, but that actually, if she was on a bad day or a good day, it would make a difference to whether she would actually sign up for assisted death and be deemed to have capacity. If a patient with undiagnosed dementia, would the noble and learned Lord feel happy that that has been tackled? And then the final thing I want, sorry, I'm slightly distracted. The final thing I wanted to say, sorry. Anyway, I think you've got the gist of what I'm saying. I do, however, believe. Sorry, no. During COVID, we recognised that there was the need to treat care homes specially and differently than anywhere else. Sadly, in that instance, it was at the great expense of care homes and the elderly, who were locked away from their family and loved ones, and in many instances died as a consequence of the wrong policy. But it is also the case that during that time we did recognise that care homes have a special, we as a society have a special responsibility to the elderly in care homes, and therefore surely this bill can create special measures to ensure that care home people who live in care homes can have, all we're asking for, very modest, is that proper clinical, holistic assessment is done of capacity and it's not left to chance.